August 5, 2023 started out as a completely normal day. It was a warm, sunny Saturday in the quiet town of Bel Air, Los Angeles, California. Rachel Moran, a 37-year-old woman, was going about her usual routine. Rachel was passionate about fitness, ran a small business, and above all else, was a mother of 5. That evening, she told her boyfriend, Richard Tobin, that she was going for a run along the Ma and Pa Heritage Trail, a scenic path beloved by locals. She had planned in advance to stop by Target to grab some groceries, drop them off in her car, and then start her run from William Street Trailhead. It was still early, just 6 p.m. The sun was high, the weather warm. Rachel had no reason to think this run would be any different than the others. But this one was. As the hours passed, the sense of routine began to fade. 7 o'clock came and went. Then 8 o'clock. Then 9 o'clock. Still no sign of Rachel. By 11 p.m., she had been missing for over 5 hours, from what was supposed to be just a short jog. Richard began to worry. So, at 11:25 p.m., he contacted the police to report her missing. As is widely known, the first 24 hours of a missing person case are critical. However, authorities often take their time when dealing with missing adult cases, since adults are legally free to disappear by choice. And from an outside perspective, there was no clear indication of foul play in Rachel's case. That, alone, might have been reason enough for the police to hold back. But Richard knew better. He knew Rachel. To him, her behavior was deeply out of character. Rachel was a 37-year-old woman, born on May 1, 1986 in Dover, New Hampshire. One of 8 siblings. In 2009, the family suffered a great loss with the passing of her father, Ronald. After his death, to support her family, Rachel started a house cleaning business, giving her the flexibility she needed to raise her children. She made sure her kids went to school, got love and attention, and her large supportive family helped her immensely. She had 5 children from 3 different fathers, and though the relationships were complex, all 3 men remained active in their children's lives. In early summer 2023, Rachel began a new relationship with Richard Tobin, who was 27. She had been passionate about fitness and fashion her whole life. In fact, her love for fitness was exactly what led her to go for a run that day. It was a trail she knew well, one she had run many times. With its trees, streams, and wildlife, it was no surprise it was among her favorites. But sadly, this time she didn't come back. Rachel was the kind of person who stayed in frequent contact with everyone. So when she went silent, the concern came quickly. At home, Richard was pacing the floor, growing more and more anxious. Midnight came and went. Still nothing. He knew he couldn't just sit around. By then, he had already contacted Rachel's family. Soon he learned that the last person she had messaged was her 18-year-old daughter, Faye. Rachel had sent her a text at 7:04 p.m., about half an hour after she left the house. But when Faye responded 30 minutes later, Rachel never read the message. To Richard, that detail changed everything. At 3 a.m., Richard went out into the night to search for her. It didn't take long before they found their first clue. Richard and Rachel's sister Violet drove around Bel Air, checking all the usual places Rachel might have gone. They eventually found her car parked beside Independent Brewing Company, just steps away from the William Street Trail entrance. This information was enough to change the police's approach. After all, even if Rachel had chosen to disappear, why would she leave her car behind? By the next morning, a full investigation was underway. Friends and family organized volunteer groups to help with the search. Word spread quickly, especially online. By morning, both police and locals were combing the trail. Of course, when someone disappears, there is always hope they'll be found alive. But sadly, these searches often don't end well. On the morning of August 6th, 2 volunteers, Cecilia and Evan, confirmed the tragic ending to this story. Like many others, they headed to the trail, but instead of sticking to the main path, they chose to venture into the trees, following deer tracks and abandoned areas. There, Cecilia noticed something, a faint stain among the leaves and branches. Hard to identify at first, but upon closer inspection, she realized it was blood. Between fear and dread, she called out to Evan. He took the lead, following the trail deeper into the woods, until they reached two dark drainage tunnels hidden deep in the forest. Evan stepped closer and looked inside one of them, then suddenly went quiet. A few feet away, a woman's naked, bloodied body was lying face down in the water. Rachel Moran had been found. They immediately noticed that the back of her head was covered in severe wounds. They called 911 at once. Within minutes, detectives arrived and secured the scene. Rachel had bruises on her arms and wrists, signs of clear struggle. And then came the most horrific detail. It appeared that Rachel had been sexually assaulted before she was killed. Evidence inside the tunnel told its own grim story. Blood was smeared along the walls, and about 200 feet away, searchers found her cracked phone and earbuds, the ones she was wearing during her run. Nearby, hidden in bushes close to the main trail, officers found her smartwatch. The cause of death was quickly determined: multiple blunt force injuries with a sharp object, along with strangulation. Rachel had suffered approximately 20 severe blows to the head, sparing no doubt in the investigators' minds. This was a murder. The technology she left behind painted a chilling picture. Data from her phone, earbuds, and smartwatch all indicated her time of death was around 7:06 p.m., just minutes after she sent that final message to her daughter. The brutal details of her death shocked the entire community. As you can imagine, the grief of her family and friends was unimaginable. With her body found, the focus of the investigation shifted clearly to one goal: finding out who killed Rachel Moran. With the killer still at large, the urgency to identify him was critical. At the crime scene, investigators found not only physical evidence but also genetic material, including DNA. A public call was issued, asking anyone who had seen Rachel between 5 p.m. and 1 a.m. to come forward with information. Fortunately, several witnesses responded. 2 people confirmed seeing Rachel in the area before she headed to the trail. She was seen entering a Wawa store at approximately 6:30 p.m. and later parking her car near a local factory at around 6:50 p.m. This was a promising start to the investigation, but at that stage, there was little to do other than grieve Rachel's loss. As a result, her funeral was held on the first Saturday of August 2023. In the days that followed, despite the growing media attention, efforts to uncover strong leads yielded no concrete progress. Days turned into weeks with no developments, until 2 witnesses came forward with crucial information. On the evening of Rachel's disappearance, a man named Kyle and his girlfriend Olivia were out walking their dog on the same trail. They told police they saw Rachel jogging past them between 6 o'clock and 7 p.m. She gave them a quick smile as she passed by. They noted that she was alone, wearing headphones, and there was nothing that raised concern. They continued their walk. However, later that night, around 8 p.m. upon their return, they felt that something was off. They then heard the sound of a branch snapping in the woods, which drew their attention. When they looked through the trees, they saw a man hiding among them. The witnesses recalled that the man was wearing a gray hoodie and was moving deliberately, as if trying not to be seen. Even more disturbing, he was carrying something long on his shoulder. Something that, upon closer inspection, looked like a shovel. Based on the couple's statement, a local police officer decided to search the woods near the tunnels to see if anything could be found. There, lying on the ground, he discovered a shovel. Upon examining it closely, he realized it matched the description given by the couple. Although many details were still unclear, this discovery gave investigators a grim picture of Rachel's final moments. There were also new developments. The DNA found at the crime scene was analyzed and compared to national databases. On August 17th, the first real breakthrough came. The DNA matched a crime scene from a home invasion in Los Angeles that occurred just 2 months prior. Although the perpetrator's identity and name were still unknown, this was a critical first lead. Surveillance footage from the Los Angeles incident revealed that the same man Maryland police were searching for had broken into the home and violently assaulted a mother and her 9-year-old daughter. This wasn't just the first appearance of Rachel's killer, it was captured on camera during another brutal crime. The man fled under cover of darkness through the front door, unaware he had left behind vital evidence, a cap soaked with his DNA. This DNA was later linked to Rachel's murder, committed over 4,000 miles away. But this wasn't his only mistake. He was also unknowingly captured on the home's doorbell camera. From that footage, authorities could tell he was likely Latino, in his 20s. The video was quickly released to the public in the hope that someone could identify him. Meanwhile, the FBI joined the investigation, focusing on matching the DNA to the man seen in the footage. In collaboration with Otham's team, investigators used advanced forensic genomics to build a detailed genetic profile of the unknown suspect. The results revealed that the DNA belonged to a man in his early 20s, believed to be from Central America. Unfortunately, his DNA did not match any existing international database, leading investigators to suspect that he may have entered the country illegally and therefore had no official records or traceable identity tied to his violent past. Despite this progress and new insights, the case stalled once again. Days became weeks, and weeks turned into months. Although some new developments emerged, none were decisive. By November, Rachel's family decided to continue their own efforts, distributing over 10,000 flyers in the Los Angeles area. Sadly, as 2024 began, the case remained unsolved. However, 6 months after her death, things finally began to shift. In February, investigators released a new composite sketch of the suspect, along with a reward. The reward started at $10,000, doubled thanks to a donation from a local law firm, and then doubled again after a generous anonymous donor from Bel Air contributed, raising the total to $35,000. Despite this new initiative, things remained stagnant for a few more weeks. The killer was still out there, nameless, faceless, and invisible. Yet, efforts to find him never ceased, from Rachel's family, the community, and the authorities. Then, in May 2024, a major breakthrough occurred. After months of precise forensic work, genealogical investigation, and interagency cooperation, a name finally emerged from the shadows: Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez. He matched the profile of the man they had been hunting. Finally, they had a name. But as for his location, no one knew. Starting with a violent home invasion in Los Angeles and ending in the murder of Rachel, Victor had become a wanted man. Investigators believed Victor thought he was above the law after crossing the U.S. border, undocumented and untraceable, becoming reckless and dangerous. He broke into a home in Los Angeles, sexually assaulted a woman, then vanished into the night. From there, he made his way across the country, where he eventually encountered Rachel. Fortunately, even though Victor himself remained hidden, his connections to the United States were not completely invisible. Investigators discovered that Victor had been living with his family in Maryland until December 2023, 4 months after Rachel's murder. But without warning or explanation, he left the family home. In early May 2024, Victor disappeared without a trace. He didn't say anything, didn't say goodbye to anyone, he simply vanished. Fortunately, he left behind several personal belongings that were quickly handed over to the police for forensic analysis. As expected, the DNA extracted from his clothing matched the genetic profile found at the scene of Rachel's murder, as well as from the home invasion in Los Angeles. But that wasn't all the officers found. Interestingly, his DNA also matched an unsolved murder of a young woman in El Salvador, strongly indicating this was not his first time. With the growing amount of evidence, law enforcement finally had what they needed to issue a nationwide arrest warrant. Naturally, it had to be a federal-level warrant because Victor had already proven to be highly mobile, impossible to pin down in one place for long. Then in June 2024, the Harford County Sheriff's Office received a tip from Tulsa, Oklahoma. It turned out the suspect was believed to be in the area. On June 14, with the help of cell phone data, the FBI tracked his location to a bar near 21st Street and Garnett. At exactly 8 p.m., officers moved in on the bar, Los Dos Amigos. Police quickly surrounded the building, leaving Victor no chance to escape. As you can see here, the operation was fully documented by one of the officers' body cameras. Inside, Victor was calmly sitting at the bar. Fortunately, that would be the last sip of his freedom. After exchanging a few words, the officers quietly escorted him outside for questioning. When asked for identification, he provided a fake name, but made a mistake by admitting he was from El Salvador. After further questioning, his real identity was revealed. Officers took several photos to document the long-awaited moment, resulting in high-quality mugshots like this. Moments later, he was booked into the Tulsa County Jail. So, who is Victor Hernandez? When it comes to his life before arriving in the United States, details are scarce, but what is known is horrifying. Victor entered the U.S. in February 2023, just 1 month after a warrant had been issued for his arrest in El Salvador for the murder of a young woman. As investigators dug deeper, they found that Victor had connections in Washington, D.C., Virginia, and Maryland. He didn't seem to be moving randomly. Rather, he was moving with intent, slipping through multiple communities known for gang activity. He himself was known to several criminal networks. His gang-related lifestyle wasn't just dangerous, it was rooted in violence. And if there was still any doubt about the kind of man he was, that doubt vanished the moment police unlocked his phone. Inside, investigators found dozens of photos of Rachel Moran, along with extremely disturbing content. The material painted a terrifying portrait of someone who didn't just commit crimes. He seemed to take pride in keeping mementos from his victims through photographs. Thankfully, his obsession with documenting everything made it almost impossible for him to deny involvement. The announcement of his arrest was monumental for the community. After a 10-month-long manhunt, they finally had a name and a face for the monster. In a symbolic gesture to the community, officers posted banners across the park announcing Victor's capture. Following his arrest, Victor was officially charged with 2 counts of murder, 1 count of sexual assault, and additional related charges. As legal proceedings began, the Harford County District Attorney made her intentions clear. If convicted, Victor Hernandez would face the maximum sentence permitted under Maryland law. Since the death penalty had long been abolished in the state, this meant life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite the mounting mountain of evidence closing in around him, Victor pleaded not guilty. He refused to speak to investigators, and during his court appearance, he formally entered a plea of innocence. For nearly a year, both the prosecution and the defense worked to build their cases. Finally, on April 1, 2025, jury selection began for the long-awaited trial. Opening statements were presented on April 4th, and from that moment, the courtroom was filled with emotional testimonies. The prosecution presented a massive amount of evidence, including crime scene photos, forensic reports, and gruesome details of the brutality Rachel endured at the hands of this monster. The courtroom was often heavy with emotion, especially as Rachel's family and loved ones sat just feet away from Victor. On the 9th day of the trial, all eyes were on him. He had the opportunity to speak, to explain, deny, or even plead for mercy. But instead, he said nothing at all. He chose to remain silent. In many ways, that silence spoke louder than any words. After viewing some of the trial footage, it became clear even his own defense team realized the battle was lost. Their case rested entirely on one witness, a forensic technician who questioned the methods used to extract Victor's phone records and search history. But her testimony lasted only 10 minutes, compared to 9 long days of intense prosecution arguments. With that, the trial neared its end. The jury was sent to deliberate Victor's fate, and returned in record time. After less than 50 minutes, they found Martinez Hernandez guilty of first-degree murder, first-degree rape, third-degree sexual assault, and kidnapping. Following the verdict, Harford County State's Attorney Allison Healy stated that the prosecution would seek the maximum penalty during the sentencing hearing, which is scheduled for August 11th. The sense of relief in the courtroom was immediate. For Rachel's family, it wasn't just an end to pain, it was the realization of justice. For a community that waited nearly a year for answers, this verdict finally allowed them to breathe again. Thanks to modern technologies like artificial intelligence, we may finally see a reduction in such crimes in the future. Starting in November 2023, AI-powered cameras were installed along the trail where Rachel lost her life, a direct response to her case, designed to protect others in that same area. The system is extensive, with over 100 high-resolution cameras covering 26 major zones along the path. But these aren't ordinary surveillance cameras. They can detect if someone is having a medical emergency, being attacked, or if a firearm appears in the frame. When such events occur, the system sends instant alerts to emergency responders. In other words, help can be on the way before a person even has the chance to call for it. Magnifying glass tilted left. The Rachel case isn't just a story. It's a cry for justice. Collision. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the most powerful cases. Speech balloon. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe justice was served?